Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2022 Toyota Highlander, we're going to be showing you how to install the CURT Class 3 2-inch trailer hitch receiver. But before we do that, why don't we check it out and make sure that this is something that's going to work for you. So first and foremost, probably one of the biggest questions that we get asked is if the hitch is going to interfere with the hands-free liftgate assist. So for those of you that have the models where you can kick your foot underneath there and the hatch open up. Now, unfortunately for today, our Highlander here does not come equipped with that feature, but if yours does have it, it is still going to work, even with the hitch in place. I know that from past experience and a lot of other folks writing in and verifying that it does work. Really, the only thing that you're going to have to do differently is kick your foot to either side of the hitch and it'll open up. So it might take you a little practice to kind of find that sweet spot, but once you do, you're not going to run into any issues. With that said though, putting a hitch on your Highlander really does make sense. You know, it looks right at home. These things are super capable and we see a ton of them in here at eTrailer, and people are using them to do a ton of different things, whether they're pulling a small trailer, pulling around a pretty big camper, using accessories and things like that. You know, having a hitch back here is really going to open up your opportunities and what you can use your Highlander for. So compared to some of the other hitches, this one's going to be a little bit more visible. So it's going to kind of drop down underneath the back of your Highlander. Honestly though, I mean, it doesn't look bad at all, I don't think. You know, it kind of sits up nice and tight, sits back a little bit, and I mean, it blends in pretty good. If you're someone that is really concerned about the appearance, there's other hitches available that actually kind of sit up behind your bumper a little bit, and really the only thing you'll see with those is a receiver tube opening. If that's what you're looking for, I really like the eTrailer one. I think it looks the best personally, but there's a couple of options out there that you can pick from. And with that said, one of the things that I do like about this setup is it's going to be the clearance. So what I mean by that, end of the receiver tube opening here is going to be pretty much about flush with your bumper. So if you're looking to use accessories like a bike rack or, you know, maybe a cargo carrier, something along those lines, it's going to give you enough clearance to actually fold them in that upright position and not have to worry about them hitting the back of your Toyota. With this being a Class 3 hitch, it is going to give us that 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening, so really common size, ton of different accessories will work with it. At the end, there's going to be a reinforced collar for a little bit of extra support, and it is going to use that standard 5/8 pin and clip. Now, keep in mind, a pin and clip does not come included. If you need one though, not a huge deal, you can always grab it right here at eTrailer. The safety chain openings I am a fan of. They're a plate style, and these things are really big, super easy to get to, and that's going to allow you to use just about any size hook that you might have. Now I just want to go over the hitch's weight capacities, and there's some really high numbers actually. As far as the maximum gross tongue weight rating goes, that's going to be 900 pounds, and that's going to be the amount of weight that is pushing down on the hitch. So really high number. You'll be able to use any size bike rack or cargo carrier that you'd want to, for example. As far as the hitch's maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, that's going to be 6,000 pounds, and that's going to be the amount of weight that is pulling on the hitch. So the weight of your trailer plus anything you might have on it. This hitch can be used with the weight distribution system, which is a separate component, and if you use that, the weight capacity for the trailer weight rating is going to increase. And what that weight distribution system is going to do is help keep your Highlander and your trailer nice and level whenever you're towing it down the road. So if you're someone that's pulling a big camper or something along those lines, that might be something that's definitely worth checking into. With that said though, tongue weight rating is going to remain the same at 900 pounds when you use that weight distribution, and the trailer weight rating, that's going to go up to 8,000 pounds. With all that in mind though, it's never a bad idea just to grab your Highlander's owner's manual. That way you can make sure your Toyota can pull that much weight safely. And you know, whenever you're pulling a trailer down the road, you are going to want the lights to work on it. That way everyone around you knows what's going on, and you'll be safe and legal. And to accomplish that, you can always pick up some trailer wiring. Let's go ahead and just grab a couple of measurements. That way we could try to figure out which hitch mounted accessories will work best. If you go from the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, that's going to be 16 3/4 of an inch. So if you're going to be pulling a trailer, chances are pretty good you can use a ball mount that has a straight shank. If you go from the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of our rear bumper here, that's going to be at about 2.5 inches. We kind of talked about this earlier, but you can use that measurement to figure out exactly if any of those folding accessories can be stored upright without any contact of your rear bumper. There are a couple of things I want to touch base on in regards to fitment. So this is going to fit pretty much all the Highlanders. It's going to work with the hybrid like we have here today, with the exception of the XSE models. This hitch is not going to work with those. So if that's a model you have, you need to look into some other hitches. There's a couple available that that will work with that model. So you know, you're in good shape there. And I also want to mention a couple things about the spare tire. So if you have a full-size spare tire, regardless of your submodel, if you've got that full-size spare, so if the rim where the spare tire is mounted on, if that's over 18 inches, it's going to interfere with the hitch. And the only way you could put it up is if you took the spare off and kept it inside or in your garage or something like that. But the good news is that's a pretty rare occurrence. I've yet to see one that has that big of a spare tire, but it's just something that I wanted to mention. You know, if you're that one person that has it, and you know, you don't want to be disappointed when you get the hitch and have to work around it. So definitely check that just to be on the safe side. And you know, really other than that, at the end of the day, a nice hitch. You know, even though it's visible, it doesn't look bad by any means, at least in my opinion. And it's really going to help you do those things that you're looking to get done, whether it's pulling your boat, your camper, your trailer, or using those accessories. So something you really can't go wrong with. As far as the installation goes, really not too bad. Toyota made it pretty easy on us. Couple small things you have to do, but essentially the hitch is more or less just going to kind of hold it up in place and bolt it right in. So really shouldn't give you too many issues. Speaking of that though, why don't we go ahead, pull into the garage and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be underneath the back of our Toyota. And first thing we need to do over here on the driver's side is remove this underbody panel. And so there's going to be a few different fasteners that we need to pull out. The first style will be like these, the push pin type. And to get these out, you can take a flathead screwdriver or even a trim panel tool if you got one. Pop the head of the fastener out, and that'll let you remove it completely. And so we'll just kind of work our way around here. Looks like we'll have one more there. Get that one out. And then we're going to have some screws as well. So one there, it's a 10 millimeter. And it looks like we're going to have two here as well. And what we can do, if we move up, kind of in this opening here by our spare tire, we're going to have some more plastic nuts. And you can take a 12 millimeter, and a lot of times you can just do these by hand. And they're not actually going to come off. A lot of times they'll stay with the panel, but if they're giving you any trouble, what you might have to do is kind of apply some downward pressure on it while you're unscrewing these. Get it free, and after we get this one, it should be the last one. If not a big deal. We'll find the other one. So, felt like it came free. And we can go ahead and just work this out and set it to the side for now. Now if you look on the bottom of our frame rail here, we're going to have some plugs, and we need to pull those out. So you just take a screwdriver and get all these removed. And once we have them out, we're going to do the same thing over on the other side. So on the driver's side here, there's a total of 5 of them. On the passenger side, there will only be 4. Now if we move over here to the passenger side, if we look, we're going to have this little metal bracket, and we need to get that out of the way so the hitch will go up here without any issues. And there's 2 bolts. One of them will be a 10 millimeter. Remove that. And then we can switch over to a 17 millimeter socket and pull this one out. I can drop this bracket down and get it out of the way. What we need to do now is lower our exhaust down some. That way it'll give us a little extra room to work. Before we do that though, I like to take a strap and just kind of run it from side to side. And that'll help support the exhaust a little bit and kind of help us control how fast and how far we let it come down. So we should be able to remove just this one hanger, and that should provide us with the clearance that we need. This is it right here, and you can spray it down with some soapy water or penetrating oil to help lubricate it. And you can take a pry bar, and we're just going to pry the rubber portion off of the metal hanger. So once you have that removed, what we can do is come back to our strap. Maybe just loosen that up a little bit. That should provide us with the space that we need there. Now let's just go ahead and go over our attachment points and our hardware that we're going to use to secure the hitch. It's going to be the same setup on each side, and you're going to have a total of 3. So this weld nut, and this one. And even though they're covered, sometimes not a bad idea if you want to spray them down with some penetrating oil. Just use a brush like this and clean out the threads. That way if there's any junk in there, it won't interfere with our bolts. And the hardware combination that you're going to use is just going to be a bolt. You're going to put on a conical tooth washer. Make sure that the teeth on the washer are going to face up towards the hitch. And so when we're holding our hitch up here, you're just going to take these, and these are simply just going to thread into those factory weld nuts. Now with the next set of hands, you can take your hitch and raise it into position. You want to go up and over the muffler. You're going to have to kind of pull that tailpipe down just a little bit to get it to clear. But we can line it up. Take one of our bolts, and we want to get at least one started on each side, hand tight. That way the hitch will support itself while we work on the rest of it. So once we have all of the hardware in place and hand tight, we'll come back with a 19 millimeter socket and snug everything down. Once all the bolts are snug, you need to make sure and come back with a torque wrench and tighten everything down to the amount specified in the instructions. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can grab one here at eTrailer, or a lot of times you can go to your local auto parts store and they'll have one there available to rent. Once everything's torqued, now we can rehang our exhaust. So this time just re-lubricate it, and you can just line everything up by hand, get that back in place. Once that is done, now we can get our strap out of the way. At this point, you can reinstall the underbody panel, and you actually have a couple of choices here on what you want to do with it. One of them being you can just leave it off. That's perfectly fine. That's what we're going to do today, and just make things a little bit easier for video purposes as well. But with that said, if you're wanting to reinstall it, it's pretty straightforward. There's a diagram in the instructions that you can use and trim part of this out and put it back up and re-secure it the opposite way. And what I do too is not only use a diagram, but a lot of times I'll hold this up and kind of eyeball it as well. And that makes it a little easier to trim too. A lot of times, you know, you can get a pretty good cut doing it like that. With this being pretty thick plastic, I would probably suggest using some type of power tool, maybe a Dremel tool, a small jigsaw, something like that. If you don't have any of that stuff, a good old pair of good snips will get the job done. It'll just take you a little bit longer. There is something I do want to mention for those of you that were wondering, and that's in reference to this small plastic tab that's right over our tailpipe. Instructions suggest that you cut a portion of it off, and you can do that. That's perfectly fine, but you don't have to. You don't absolutely have to by any means. As you notice, we did not trim ours. And that's because this is so pliable. Honestly, it just kind of bent up out of the way, and we were able to get our hitch up there, and it's, you know, it's definitely not hurting anything. So when it comes to that, you can cut it, that's fine, or you can leave it like that and just, you know, push it up out of the way when you're installing the hitch. That'll finish up our look at and our installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch Receiver on our 2022 Toyota Highlander.